Have you ever felt a strange tension in the room, not from what's said, but from what's left unsaid? What if I told you some people don't just want you to fail? They want to be the reason you fall. And here's the real twist. The moment you stop reacting is the moment they start unraveling. You see, not everyone who opposes you does it openly. Some people won't challenge you to your face. They won't start arguments or pick fights in broad daylight. Instead, they work behind the scenes, quietly, persistently, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of others. They're waiting for that perfect, fragile moment when you're most vulnerable to strike. But the attack doesn't come with noise or drama. It creeps in like a shadow, subtle, invisible, but devastating. And while you're busy living your life, they're busy weaving a plan to make it fall apart. These people don't just dislike you. Their goal is far darker. They want to break you. It's like a wildfire smoldering beneath the surface, hidden, quiet, and deadly. At first, there's just a faint wisp of smoke, easy to dismiss. But by the time the flames appear, it's already too late. The damage is done and the fire is consuming everything. Or imagine a vulture circling in the sky. It doesn't swoop down or attack. It waits, watches, silently hoping you'll weaken so it can move in when you're too tired to resist. That's exactly how these people operate, not with open conflict, but with silent sabotage. Yet, in this quiet war, you hold the real power. You can either step into their trap, or you can rise above it, because the moment you refuse to engage, when you stop playing their game, that's when their frustration begins, and that's where the real shift starts. But once you stop playing their game, once you stop feeding their need for control, their entire plan begins to fall apart. So here's the question. How do you spot these people early before the damage is done, without living in fear, without becoming paranoid, and without second-guessing your own instincts? Stay with me until the end, because the last strategy might completely shift the way you handle toxic people. Let's begin. Chia 1. They spread lies to tarnish your reputation. This is one of the most calculated and destructive tactics a malicious person will use when they don't just dislike you. They want to dismantle you. They don't whisper gossip for entertainment. They carefully plant false stories with the intention to ruin your name. This isn't harmless chatter. It's an act of war. They twist facts, magnify your flaws, and craft a version of you that barely resembles the truth. But they do it with one goal in mind: to turn others against you, because they know something powerful. If they can get people to doubt your integrity, you'll be forced to fight an uphill battle just to prove your worth again. It's not just about hurting your feelings, it's about isolating you, weakening your influence, making you feel alone. But here's where Stoic wisdom comes in. Heraclitus once said, "Character is fate." In other words, your reputation may be stained, but your character is what ultimately decides your destiny. So, protect your character like your life depends on it, because in a way, it does. No matter how many lies they spread, if you remain steady and consistent, the truth eventually reveals itself. People who genuinely know you will recognize the difference between deception and authenticity. Don't waste your energy chasing down every rumor that only gives the liars more power. Let me share a story. There was a man I once knew. Let's call him Daniel. He was a respected leader in his company, known for his work ethic, integrity, and calm leadership, but jealousy crept in. a bitter colleague began spreading whispers, claiming Daniel only got ahead because of favoritism, that he wasn't as competent as people thought. At first, Daniel wanted to fight back. He felt the urge to correct every lie and defend his name. But then he paused. He realized something powerful. His best defense wasn't arguing. It was being the man everyone already knew him to be. So he stayed the course. He kept working hard, kept leading with integrity, and over time, the truth rose to the surface. The lies collapsed under their own weight. People saw through the manipulator, and Daniel's character remained untouchable. Because here's the truth: lies are temporary, but character is permanent. So how do you deal with someone who spreads lies about you? First, stay calm. Reacting emotionally only gives them more fuel. Second, let your actions speak louder than their words. Stay rooted in who you are. The truth has a way of surfacing when you do. And third, don't play their game. Defend yourself when needed, but don't waste your breath trying to win over those committed to misunderstanding you. Reputation is built over years. No one can erase that with a few poisonous words. Stay anchored in your truth, and eventually their lies will collapse under the strength of your consistency. And now, let's take it even deeper. What happens when these people stop using lies and start using silence as their weapon? In the last part, we saw how lies can isolate you, but your integrity, when protected, will always outlast deception. Now let's go even deeper, because sometimes the threat isn't in what others say about you, but in how they make you feel about yourself. Patutu, they manipulate you emotionally. This is one of the most insidious tactics used by people who don't just dislike you, they want to control you. And they don't do it by yelling or arguing. They do it quietly, covertly, and with precision. Emotional manipulation isn't loud, it's subtle, calculated. It doesn't come with open aggression, but with a quiet poison that works from the inside out. They don't fight you directly. Instead, they use guilt, fear, and shame, like invisible chains, wrapping around your mind until you begin to question your confidence, your judgment, even your reality. At first, it doesn't even look like manipulation. It feels like concern. They might say things like, "I just worry about you. You don't seem like yourself lately." Or, when you make a choice, they don't. Like they respond with guilt. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" Little by little, these emotional games start to chip away at your self-worth. You find yourself overthinking your actions, apologizing for things that don't require an apology, doubting your own voice. And that's exactly the goal. Because the moment you start second-guessing yourself, the moment you start relying on them for reassurance, they've won. They've trapped you in a loop where they manufacture the Aftara insecurity and then act like they're the only one who can help fix it. But here's the truth. They don't want to support you. They want to keep you small, so you stay dependent on their approval. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes a weapon of clarity. Epictetus once said, "He who controls his emotions controls his destiny." What does that mean in this context? It means that the moment you stop letting others hijack your emotional state, you take back control. Their words only have power over you if you give it to them. The more emotionally grounded you are, the less they can shake you. The calmer your internal world, the more chaotic their manipulation will appear. Let me share a story with you. There's a man I know, we'll call him Ryan. He had a longtime friend who constantly played games with his emotions. Whenever Ryan made a decision that didn't benefit this friend, the guilt trips would start. Wow, I guess I just don't matter to you anymore. Or when Ryan began focusing on his personal goals, that friend would say, "You've changed. You're not the same person I used to know." At first, Ryan felt terrible. He questioned himself. He wondered, am I being selfish? Am I the problem? But after stepping back, he had a realization. This person only had a problem with him when he stopped putting their needs first. So how do you deal with emotional manipulators? First, recognize the pattern. If someone consistently makes you feel guilty, fearful, or ashamed for making independent choices, that's not concern, that's control. Second, stop seeking their validation. You don't owe your growth to anyone's approval. And third, reclaim your emotional independence. The moment you detach their opinion from your self-worth, their influence begins to dissolve. Because at the end of the day, emotional manipulation is only effective when you believe their narrative over your own. And the moment you stop doing that, they lose. Earlier, we uncovered how emotional manipulators gain control when you surrender your inner balance. But once you learn to live by your values and regulate your emotions, their influence begins to disappear. Because the less you react, the less control they have. At the end of the day, manipulation only works if you give someone else the power to define how you feel. Reclaim your mind, and their games lose all effect. Stay grounded. Trust yourself. Never allow someone else to dictate your worth. Now, let's move into another dangerous tactic, one that's subtle but incredibly destructive. 3. They provoke you to ruin your image. This strategy is one of the most calculated moves someone can make when they don't just hate you. They want to dismantle your reputation piece by piece. They don't want to argue. They want you to explode. They want to provoke an emotional reaction so they can step back and say, "See, look how unstable they are." And the worst part? It's no accident, it's a trap. A deliberate setup designed to make you look like the villain. At first, it might seem like they're just annoying or difficult. They toss out passive-aggressive remarks. They interrupt you, downplay your achievements, or embarrass you in public. You try to keep your cool, but they keep going, poking, nudging, pushing your buttons, waiting for that one moment when you finally break, and when you do, that's when they strike. Suddenly, they put on a calm, innocent face. "Whoa, why are you being so aggressive?" And just like that, you're the one under scrutiny. People forget the weeks, maybe months, of subtle attacks. They only remember your reaction. Here's the truth. This isn't about winning a disagreement. It's about manipulating how others perceive you. They want to taint your image, make you seem unstable, unreasonable, or even dangerous. And the more you react, the more ammunition they have. So, how do you fight back? Through something much more powerful than shouting self-control. This is where Stoic wisdom shines again. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." What does that mean here? It means the strongest possible response is no response at all. When they try to bait you, the greatest victory is to remain unshaken. Your calmness, your silence, your refusal to play their game. That's what destroys their strategy. Let me tell you a story. A woman I know, we'll call her Sarah, had a co-worker who constantly undermined her. He'd mock her ideas. In meetings, take credit for her work and toss out subtle jabs whenever he could. After weeks of silent frustration, Sarah snapped. She confronted him in front of the entire team, her voice raised, emotions raw. And in that moment, he leaned back, looked surprised, and said, "Wow, Sarah, I don't know why you're being so aggressive." The room fell silent. No one remembered his months of manipulation. They only saw her outburst. But Sarah learned. She didn't let it happen again. From that day forward, whenever he tried to provoke her, she stayed calm, completely unmoved, unshaken, and it drove him mad. He had no reaction to exploit, no story to spin, and over time, others started to see the truth. So, how do you deal with people like that? First, recognize the setup. If someone is clearly pushing your buttons, pause. That's your sign. Disengage. Second, master your emotional state. They can't distort your image if you remain in control of your behavior. And third, let silence be your power. The less you give, the more they reveal themselves. Because in the end, staying calm isn't weakness, it's strategy. We just explored how staying calm in the face of provocation protects your reputation far more than any emotional reaction ever could. Because in the end, your story isn't written by your enemies. It's shaped by your consistency and self-control. When you rise above the bait and let your actions speak louder than their words, their efforts to ruin you fall flat. Your reputation is not defined by a single moment of anger. It's built over time through strength, poise, and restraint. So stay grounded, stay focused, and never let someone else dictate your narrative. Now, let's move on to a far more subtle and far more deceptive tactic. They pretend to be your friend to gather information. This one is dangerous because it wears a smile. Some people don't show their hostility with conflict. They hide it behind concern, curiosity, and fake kindness. They pretend to be your ally, not because they care, but because they want access. Access to your thoughts, your plans, your vulnerabilities. At first, they seem genuinely interested in you. They ask about your goals, your frustrations, the people you trust. They nod thoughtfully, offer fake sympathy, act like they're someone you can confide in. But here's what's really going on. They're not collecting memories. They're collecting ammunition. Because the truth is, they're not supporting you. They're studying you. They want to twist your words, expose your struggles, use your own truth against you at the worst possible moment. Sometimes they leak what you shared. Other times, they distort your word, painting you as careless, disloyal, or even unstable. And sometimes, they just stay quiet, waiting, saving what they know until it can do the most damage. This is where Stoic wisdom comes to your defense once again. Epictetus once said, "Do not reveal all of yourself to everyone, for not all have good intentions." What does that mean? It means not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Not everyone who listens cares. And not everyone who asks deserves an answer. Let me share a real story. A woman I know, we'll call her Rachel, had a co-worker who always played the role of the supportive colleague. He'd ask about her long-term ambitions, how she felt about certain decisions at work, and even personal struggles. She thought he was just kind, genuine, a friend. Until one day she overheard him speaking to their manager, repeating her words, twisted just enough to make her look like a problem. He wasn't her supporter, he was her spy. So how do you protect yourself from people like this? First, be selective with your trust. Just because someone listens doesn't mean they care. Second, test their intentions. Share something small and insignificant, then watch how they handle it. If it spreads or gets distorted, you have your answer. And third, guard your deeper thoughts. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your inner life, because at the end of the day, someone who truly supports you won't dig for secrets. And anyone who seems overly curious about your private world, they're not trying to connect, they're trying to collect. So how do you spot these hidden enemies before it's too late? In the last section, we exposed how fake friends disguise themselves as confidants, not to connect with you, but to collect your secrets. And once you realize someone always asks about your life, but never shares their own, that's a red flag you should never ignore. So protect your words, protect your plans, but most importantly, protect yourself. Now, let's dive into one of the most dangerous tactics manipulators use to tear you down quietly and completely. 5. They try to isolate you from supportive people. This tactic isn't random. It's not emotional. It's strategic and deeply malicious. When someone doesn't just want to hurt you but wants to break you, they don't come straight at you. They go after your support system because your strength isn't just in your resilience. It's in the people who remind you who you are when you're at your lowest. And so, their plan begins to disconnect you from anyone who might defend you, empower you, or remind you of your value. At first, the sabotage is subtle. They might make quiet, concerned remarks behind your back. I don't know, something about them feels off lately. Or they might twist a minor situation to paint you as unreliable, untrustworthy, or even disloyal. They create drama where there was none. They whisper half-truths and distorted stories, just enough to plant doubt. And the worst part? It works, slowly, quietly. You begin to notice changes. Friends grow distant. Co-workers act colder. People look at you with hesitation, as if they know something you don't. Here's the real agenda. It's not just about harming your reputation. It's about removing your allies, because when you're alone, when no one's in your corner, you become easier to control, easier to pressure, easier to break. And that's exactly what they want. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes essential. Seneca once said, "Associate only with those who will make a better man of you." What does that mean in moments like this? It means that your strength lies in your tribe, in surrounding yourself with people who build, not break. The right people won't be swayed by whispers. The wrong people, they were never with you to begin with. Either way, you learn who truly belongs in your circle. Let me share a story. A woman I know, let's call her Emily, was thriving. She had strong friendships, a great reputation at work, and a community that supported her. Then, a toxic coworker began targeting her, not with open hostility, but with subtle sabotage. It started with harmless comments. "Emily seems different lately, don't you think?" Or, "I heard she said something about you. Just thought you should know." Slowly, the people around her began to shift. Conversations grew colder. Colleagues kept their distance. And worst of all, Emily didn't even know what was happening. But instead of chasing answers or begging for clarity, Emily stayed grounded. She didn't fight rumors. She didn't explain herself to people already willing to believe the worst. She focused on her truth, on the people who genuinely knew her. And over time, the lies fell apart. the manipulator's web unraveled, and the real relationships in Emily's life returned stronger than before. Because here's the truth, real bonds don't dissolve over whispers, they withstand them. So how do you handle someone trying to isolate you? First, stay aware. Notice the pattern when someone subtly tries to turn others against you. Second, don't play their game. The more you chase false narratives, the more it looks like you have something to prove. Third, focus on your real connections. The people who truly know you won't be fooled by shadows. In the last part, we talked about how isolation is one of the oldest tricks manipulators use to weaken you, but only if you allow it. Because real connection, like truth, always finds its way back. So hold tight to those who genuinely know and see you. The right people won't be fooled by manipulation. They'll recognize the truth on their own. Remember, isolation is only a weapon if you let it work. Stay strong, stay grounded, and never let someone else define your identity. Now let's talk about a quieter attack, one that targets your mind more than your surroundings. They undermine your confidence. This tactic is subtle, but powerful. It's not about destroying your world overnight. It's about eroding your self-belief, piece by piece. People who don't just dislike you, but want to see you fail, will often take this path. They'll plant small seeds of doubt, disguised as concern. They won't openly insult you. They'll offer helpful advice or constructive criticism that slowly makes you second-guess yourself. It starts out looking like support. Are you sure you're ready for that? I just don't want to see you get hurt. But the pattern becomes clear. Every time you take a step forward, they pull you 2 steps back. Here's the truth. Their goal isn't to help you grow. It's to keep you unsure. They want you stuck. They want hesitation to replace boldness. Because the moment you start questioning your decisions, your direction, your worth, that's the moment they gain control. Confidence is power, and when you lose yours, they win. This is where Stoic wisdom comes in again. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are disturbed by anything external, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your perception of it." In other words, the words or negativity of others don't define your ability. Only your reaction to them does. Let me tell you a story. There's a man I know, and we'll call him Jake. He was starting his own business, full of excitement, drive, and big dreams. But there was someone close to him, a so-called friend, who kept making subtle jabs. Are you sure you're ready for that? You know most businesses fail, right? At first, Jake brushed it off, but over time, those doubts took root. He began second-guessing every decision. What if I'm not good enough? What if they're right? But that doubt wasn't natural, it was planted. And that's exactly what this person wanted. But Jake made a choice. He reminded himself that his confidence didn't come from someone else's approval. It came from within. He chose to stop feeding into the negativity. He focused on his vision. He moved forward, even when fear whispered louder than usual. And guess what? His business grew. He succeeded, and that friend, the one who tried to undermine him, suddenly had nothing left to say. So how do you deal with people who try to break your confidence? First, recognize it for what it is. If someone's words consistently make you feel smaller instead of stronger, it's not guidance, it's sabotage. Second, trust yourself, your path, your gifts, your growth. None of that is up for debate. And third, silence the noise. You don't need validation from people who don't want to see you win, because in the end, confidence is your greatest shield. And if someone is trying to break it, it's only because they already see your strength. But what happens when that same person doesn't just attack your confidence, they start mimicking your every move? Let's explore that twisted tactic next. In the last part, we talked about how those who fear your potential will do everything they can to chip away at your confidence. But no matter how loud their doubts become, your power lies in this truth. You don't have to believe them. Hold your ground, trust your path, and never let someone else's fear define your future. If you've made it this far in the video, drop a thank God in the comments and hit like if this message resonates with you. Your support not only fuels this journey, it inspires the next one. Now let's uncover the darkest tactic of all, the one rooted not in envy, but in destruction. They will stop at nothing to see you broken. This is the most dangerous form of hatred, not just resentment, not just rivalry. This is when someone doesn't simply want to see you struggle. They want to see you completely crushed. Their goal isn't to compete with you or outshine you. It's to erase you. They don't just want you to fail. They don't even want you to exist comfortably in the same space as them. They want you silenced, defeated, gone. And they will stop at nothing to make that happen. At first, it might look like petty competition. They undermine you in meetings. They spread rumors. They take subtle actions that slow you down. But as time passes, the pattern becomes clear. This isn't about ego anymore. It's war. Every move they make is calculated. They cheer when you fall. They twist your wins into weaknesses. They target your emotional endurance, not just to hurt you, but to break you from the inside out. If they can't control your choices, they'll go after your reputation. If they can't damage your image, they'll try to wear you down mentally, hoping you'll give up, not because you lost, but because you're too tired to fight. Here's the hard truth. They don't just want to see you lose, they want to see you surrender, because to them, your strength is a threat. Your ability to keep going, despite their efforts, is the one thing they can't stand. And the only way they can win is if you quit first. This is where Stoic wisdom becomes your armor. Seneca once said, "Strength is found in enduring hardship without surrendering your virtue." What does that mean in moments like this? It means that true strength isn't about attacking back. It's about standing tall when everything is trying to pull you down. Your greatest weapon isn't revenge. It's resilience. They may lie about you. They may isolate you. They may push you to your emotional limit. But if you don't collapse, if you don't break, if you don't hand them your surrender, they never win. In the last part, we uncovered the most vicious tactic of all. When someone wants not just your failure, but your collapse. But here's the truth. If you refuse to crumble, if you remain steady in who you are, they lose. Let me share a story. There's a man I know. Let's call him Daniel. He was rising in his field, gaining respect, and building a reputation rooted in integrity. But not everyone could handle his success. One former colleague, driven by bitterness, made it a personal mission to destroy him. This person did it all, spread lies, sabotaged his opportunities, and poisoned others against him. And for a while, it worked. Daniel felt cornered, isolated. He even considered walking away. But then something shifted. He remembered that true strength isn't always about fighting fire with fire. Sometimes it's about not burning at all. So he stayed calm, stayed grounded. He kept showing up with quiet consistency. And slowly, the lies began to crack. The manipulator's mask slipped. In the end, Daniel didn't have to expose anyone. The truth did it for him. And the person who worked so hard to destroy him, they destroyed their own credibility instead. So how do you handle people who will stop at nothing to bring you down? First, don't play their game. They want chaos. They want emotion. Don't give it to them. Second, stay focused on your path. The more you fixate on them, the more power you give away. And third, endure. Without surrendering. Let your quiet strength speak for itself. At the end of the day, the only way they win is if you break. Don't give them that satisfaction. Stand tall, stand still, and watch. They'll collapse under the weight of their own bitterness. If this resonated with you, drop a comment and hit like, not just to support the video, but to remind yourself you are stronger than their tactics. You are bigger than their hate, and you never need to sink just to survive. This is the power of silent strength, and that power, it's yours.